Okay, so welcome to the lessons. Mr. Flapper Haynes, historiography, and I'm gonna be teaching you C programming. Yeah, so this what you're seeing on the screen is how the C programming language codes look like. This is how they look like, but I'm not going to start from here. I'll start from scratch. I'll start from complete basics for pedagogical reasons. So let me show you something real quick. Something about what we're going to learn in this lesson. So at first I'm going to introduce programming, and then after that I'll talk about compilation. Then lastly I'll just introduce you just a little bit to this C programming language. Okay, so let's start by defining programming. Now, what is programming? So programming, it is an activity which involves creating instructions for a computer which are intended to achieve a certain task. I repeat, programming is an activity of creating instructions for a computer which are intended to achieve a certain task. Okay, so when you create the instructions, what you're doing right there is that you are creating a program. A program is just like a set of instructions. That is a program. And a person who create this program, who create these instructions for a computer is known as a programmer. Yeah, so if you are able to create instructions for a computer to understand, it means you are a programmer. Okay, let me give you a real life example. I think I've prepared a real life example. So here is the example. So as you can see, okay, let me just say hypothetically, let's say that maybe your friend Davis don't know how to buy 5 GB data on Airtel, and then he asks from you as his friend that he gave him some instructions. So you know that Davis is able, I mean, he has the capability of buying 5 GB data on Airtel, but he just don't know how to. So what you're going to do, okay, let's say that you decide to give him some instructions that, okay, let me send you a message of instructions. You just need to follow them. Then eventually you'll be able to purchase 5 GB data. Okay, just an example. So then you type these instructions in the same order, starting from the first to the last. So when Davis receives this message, he's going to start from the bottom. He's going to dial *117#, then choose Ikari on option 1, and then choose 5 GB on option 5. Choose whether to pay. Okay, so he's going to choose whether to pay via Airtel Money or main account up to the last one. You see, so Davis is going to follow these instructions to achieve a certain task. What is the task here? The task is buying 5 GB data on Airtel. Okay, so you've instructed Davis to buy data on Airtel. The same thing is what happens to computers. Yeah, a computer has the ability to to to, to execute is like to run the instructions which you as a programmer has instructed it to do. You see, you just don't know what you want it to do, so you need to instruct it. You need to give it instruction. It won't start doing it on its own. No, it needs you, a human being, now to instruct it. You see, just like Davis, he isn't dumb enough to fail to to operate a phone. You know that he is able to, but he just don't know how to. You see, just like a computer. A computer has the ability to run programs, to execute programs based on the instructions you have given it. All you need to do is to instruct it. You see, so that's where now programming comes in. You program now, you create instructions for it now, which it should follow, and the computer will also follow in the same order, from starting from the bottom to the top. If you do this and do that, that's how it will do it. So now when Davis follows these instructions, we can say that he has executed the instructions, he has put them into action. You see, so these instructions, these are what Davis has executed. So this is how it goes. Now it's just that when it comes to programming, you have to deal with with the computer. The same way you give instructions to people, like when you're teaching maths, yeah, you give instruction. Okay, first you need to find I don't know if it is the coefficient of the square root, and then after doing this, do that, do this, and then eventually you find the answer. Yeah, yeah. Even though sometimes human beings might even make mistake, might maybe not follow all the instructions, but the computer is smart enough, it will follow exactly the way you've told it to do. Yeah, so this is how it goes. Now let's get back to the okay. So now that I've explained what programming is, so now you know that it is just like an activity of instructing the computer, right? Okay, but how are we going to be able to instruct it? How? Do we have to communicate with it verbally? No. So that's where now programming comes in. So I mean, programming languages comes in. So in the early stage of development, when computers were just created, there were no programming languages. Okay, let me just get back a little bit. So these programming languages will help you as a programmer to communicate with a computer. You don't you need to tell it by okay, let me just say okay, let me just go back. Okay, let me say the computer, according to the way it is made, according to its architecture, it only understands 1 and 0. So if you want to communicate with a computer, you need to use ones and zeros. That is on the level, on the low level. Yeah, let me show you how it looks like. Okay, so these ones and zeros you're seeing right now, this is the language which the computer understands. It is called machine code or binary codes. If you want to tell a computer to do something on a low level, you need to use these. So this is where I was trying to explain that when computers were just initially created, programmers used to use these ones and zeros. But technology started advancing. Now they created something called programming languages. They started creating programming languages, which will be easy for us human beings to write in order to communicate with the computer. So now, what happens when you write in a programming language? So here's what happens. Let me show you something. So here's what happens. I've created this diagram, yeah, to illustrate what I'm trying to tell you right now. Yeah. So here at first, let me circle it. So at first you write your code using any programming language, and actually there are a lot of programming languages, about thousands. There is C, there is C++, there is JavaScript, but they all undergo the same process. So in fact, this is the process of compilation now. So now, what happens during the process of compilation is that when you write your code using a certain programming language, it will be converted to binary digits or machine codes by this on the middle, the compiler. So the compiler will convert your codes into binary codes so that the computer can be able to understand what you're trying to tell it and then execute your program. You see? So this is how it goes. This is how the procedure goes. And now, in the real life example I can give you is that okay, let's say that you want to communicate with with a Chinese, with a person who don't know English. He only speaks Chinese, and you don't know Chinese. You see? So the easiest way you can do is to okay, let me start with the hardest. The hardest thing you can do is to learn his language, right? You also learn the Chinese language, and but that's gonna take a lot of time, right? Yeah. So the easiest thing you can do now is to use something that is called a translator. A translator will translate your language to his language and vice versa, and then that's when you'll be able to communicate. So the same thing happens here. A computer uses another language which us human beings cannot understand. Okay, in the early stage of development, programmers used to use these ones and zeros I was showing you in order to code. But uh, technology started advancing. That's when they created these programming languages so that us human beings can be able to easily code. Yeah. Otherwise, if they didn't create programming languages, I don't think there would have been a lot of programmers right now. Maybe even me, I wouldn't have been a programmer, I guess. Yeah, so this is how it goes. So us human beings are able to understand the programming languages. I'm pretty sure even when you look in the code, you can understand some things. You can look at you can understand like the word many. Let me show you the codes again. Okay. Where are the codes? Okay, these, you see, when you just look at the code, you're able to understand some words. You can see there is wow, there is retain. You see, now these are available for us human beings. But when you look at the language which the computer understands, no human being can understand this. So that's when people now came up with the idea of creating a compiler, which will be translating the programming languages into machine code so that the computer can be able to understand what we're telling it to do. Let me show you something again. So I'm going to show you how the computer understand some characters of the alphabet. There is this app called Codec. I'll show you later first of all. Okay, so the computer does not understand these letters as human beings use. Letter A, B, all these. Now, the computer, when you write letter A, the computer is going to translate it to these digits. Letter A is being represented by these digits. And these digits are what we call binary codes. So you can even write your name. in binary codes. So like Frank. So these ones and zeros you are seeing here, how the computer is going to understand your name. It is not going to read it as Frank. It is going to convert it to 0. That is when it is going to read it as Frank. You see? So what we're doing here is that we are converting these ordinary letters, which us human beings use, to binary codes, to the language which the computer will understand. Actually, this is what happens behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, when you're typing on the keyboard, for example, when you type, like let's say I type letter A. First of all, before being displayed on the screen, the computer is going to convert it into these ones and zeros, and then convert it back again to the readable format, which us human beings can understand, and then display it on the screen. This is what happens. So now so now when these ordinary letters are converted to binary codes, this process is called encoding. Let me type it in the inbox like this: encode. Encode is when ordinary letters are converted into binary codes or binary digits, which are ones and zeros, and then decode. Decoding is when these binary digits are converted back to ordinary letters or words, characters. So now imagine if we were supposed to be typing these ones and zeros when chatting with someone. That can be even complicated. Imagine just to send a hi, you need to type this 0Z. So this is how it goes, and that's the process of compilation.